I would say that the majority of my officers write 4 to 5 essays of 8 to 1,200 words every day at work.
Every day.
Every day. And it's my job to go through and read all of those and help them create better sentence structure, correct their spelling, correct their grammar.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on Literacy Journeys with Linda. You are in for a treat because my special guest today is my friend, Mr. John Redstone, who is a police officer. Thank you for joining me today. You've got a very interesting story to tell. And let's tell the audience who you are and what your title is. Tell us what you do.
Okay, yeah, like you mentioned, my name is John Redstone. I am a sergeant with the Granite City Police Department, just across the river from St. Louis, Missouri. My title at work is a patrol sergeant. I have 6 men underneath me who report to me after they do each task of their day.
And how long have you been doing this?
I'm in my 23rd year.
This is all about your literacy journey, of course, but I would have never thought about how much literacy is involved in police work. Now, we've known each other a while, and one day you told me a very interesting story about your work. If you'll tell me that story about how the there, but what happened?
Yeah, so it's a typical DUI in Illinois, which is driving under the influence traffic stop. And with that here in Illinois, that's about 8 hours of paperwork after the initial traffic stop. And it requires reading the warning to motorists. It requires documenting every word that comes out of the person's mouth. And in my report writing, I meant to say that we were there on the side of the road. And I typed in THEIR, meaning there as a group of people. And spell check didn't correct me, and at that point in my career there was no grammar check on the typing of the report. So I felt like I had a really good case until I got to court, and the defense attorney pointed out that I had used the word there incorrectly, and he used that incorrect typo or use of the English language to put into question my ability to even think clearly or be a professional person. And so the whole case ended up being thrown out because he caused the jury members to think that I was incompetent and couldn't do my job because I didn't even know the difference in there and there.
THEIR and THERE.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, John.
And so that was at a time where we were still handwriting most of our reports. And we used to carry little Webster spelling correctors that looked like calculators in our pocket. That was really pre-computers going in our squad car. And so I was more learning to spell at that point in my career than actually the grammar of how sentence structure and flow needed to be. That was disappointing to lose 8 hours worth of paperwork and several hours in trial over my lack of literacy, I suppose.
And the case was thrown out?
It was, yes. The biggest thing that surprised me in law enforcement was the thick law books that come out every year with all of the new laws.
Wow.
There's no audio file on that. You're just given this huge dictionary style book and meant to look through it and read all of what the new laws for the new year have changed or become, or what's been created or what's been removed from the law books.
Okay.
And it requires a lot of reading. The report writing itself, for an instance where an officer has to create a report, a police report, is the name, date of birth, all of that about the suspect, the victim, the witnesses, but it's also an 8 to 1,200 word essay about what that officer experienced from the time they got to the place where the offense occurred until they finished booking in the person who was charged with a crime.
A minute by minute account.
Yes.
Of everything.
So most officers carry a little notepad with them full of field notes
Okay.
where they scribble down as much as information as they can. They get through the hands-on portion of the job, and then they sit down at the computer inside their squad car. I sent you a photo of how our computers look inside our squad cars, and they type out 8 to 1,200 words describing what happened. And that's just a simple thing. That there are some that are 5 and 6 pages long that are more in-depth reports. But I would say that the majority of my officers write 4 to 5 essays of 8 to 1,200 words every day at work.
Every day.
Every day. And it's my job to go through and read all of those and help them create better sentence structure, correct their spelling, correct their grammar. And I didn't know how to do any of that when I first started, but I had a lieutenant when I was younger on the department, and we hand wrote everything. And he would literally take the police report and hold it up to the light. And if he could see where you had used whiteout, he would rip it in half and tell you to rewrite it.
Whoa.
No whiteout was allowed on his police reports. And so that really made me concentrate on my spelling and my grammar. And it was hard, but it's helped me now as I look at my young officers coming on and help them through the process.
Now, John, you said you weren't an avid reader when you got on the force, like growing up. Tell us a little bit about your background.
People who are close to high school age would say that I was a super senior. I spent a couple extra years in high school trying to get through school. School was not my priority.
Okay.
I got out of high school and joined the military. And the military didn't have a lot of reading, but had some manuals and things that were specific to the job I did. And then when I became a police officer, everything was reading and writing and being corrected. And so I have a library.
Did you know that going in? Did you know that it was?
Had no idea that there would be so much writing of police reports. I thought cops basically went out, arrested bad guys, put them in jail, and went out and arrested more. I had no idea that there were report rights to document everything that happened. I had assumed that was a detective's job, but it is everyone's job.
So after high school and the military, you didn't feel quite prepared for all this reading and writing?
Not at all. I got my job as a policeman, and I decided that I better go get a college degree. And so I started taking night classes, and that really boosted my confidence in reading and writing with taking college classes at our local community college. And, most people take 2 years to complete an associate's degree, but I took 7 because I was only taking a couple classes at a time while working full time. So I was pretty proud of the fact that in my associate's degree, I never made less than a B in any class, which was a new thing for me, which really built my confidence as a learner.
What do you mean a new thing for you?
Oh, because in high school, I struggled to pass classes. But in college, it was very simple for me. And then when I went to get my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, it was second nature to read and write to write an essay or a term paper of 25 to 30 pages was not a problem at all. And then to get the good grades to reward that effort was also nice.
Wow, that's an excellent progression of coming from high school where you barely made it out to now you have a master's degree and a college degree and a master's degree. And
yes, so I'm working on the master's degree, but yes, have 2 degrees already. But the master's is algebra is holding me up. Is the so there's
equations, quadratic equations.
Yes.
Well, tell me about now. Okay, now you're seasoned. I would say seasoned, and you have these younger guys that you supervise. You're what do you call them? You're the sergeant.
My patrolman. Yes.
Your patrolmen or patrol women. And what are you seeing with them as far as their preparation for all this literacy?
Well, at our police department, you cannot be hired without 5 years experience or an associate's degree in criminal justice. And so they are coming in with a good skill set of literacy, having to switch from just general term paper writing to police report writing, which is different. So I have some that are very open to being learned to being led or learning. Sure. But I have others that are really resistant to it, that they like the way they read and write, and it takes a little longer for them to get the message of this is the way it has to be done now.
Have you told them your story about your case being thrown?
Oh, I do. I share several of my stories of mistakes over the years that help them learn better or be better prepared or equipped to do their job. We have report writing classes.
Oh.
I often assign a book to a patrolman if he's struggling with literacy. a book that's interesting that they can read. And even though I dislike reading, I know how important it is to create a better vocabulary for myself. The more I see it in print, the more my brain can remember how to formulate that sentence structure better.
So this book doesn't have to be about police work. It could be about a sports figure. It could be LeBron James or something. So you're
Yeah.
just saying to
So
get this.
whatever I know about that police officer, I select a book that they will want to see what's on the next page, and just have them read it and then tell me about it each time we come to roll call in the morning. What'd you read in your book last night? And so that,
Wow.
just for me, that's what's helped me in learning to read and write better is reading books.
And you mentioned that V word, vocabulary, because when you
Yes.
read, it expands your vocabulary.
And I
So
would imagine the other thing I've had to get over was the embarrassment of not knowing a word. So when someone in conversation uses a word, I go, hold on, stop. I need you to define what that word means for me so that I can understand what you're saying to me. And that also broadens our vocabulary. The more I can humble myself and say, I don't understand what you're saying to me, the better I can build my own vocabulary.
well, John, it sounds like overall literacy is a huge part of police work.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't see that on TV. I do see the people with the the little notepads writing, but I don't. But now you have described what happens with those writings, and that's amazing. And so your literacy is really impacting your police work.
Oh, it absolutely does. There are, between the police department and the actual courtroom, there are people called state's attorneys, and they are basically the lawyers that fight to move the case forward. Depending on the level of literacy of the officer, the state's attorneys are more likely to pursue cases for them, as opposed to officers who struggle with literacy. The state's attorneys are more likely to take a deal instead of taking that case into a courtroom. And so it even has impacts on the level of proficiency a police officer can have doing his job.
That's interesting. Why is that? Because the judge, everyone's going to have to read. Like, who's going to read this report?
Oh,
So
that's a really good question.
yeah, who's
Uh,
reading all of this?
if a patrolman types the report, the sergeant reads the report and can send it back for corrections.
Okay, so
And
that's a sergeant.
then it goes to the detective lieutenant, who then reads it and assigns it either back to the patrolman or to a detective. After that, the captain of administration is going to read through it and make sure that everything is lined up for it and everything is where it needs to be. And then he is going to forward that case to the state's attorney's office, where each state's attorney is going to read it and decide which one of them wants to take that case on. Once they take that case on, then that police report is going to be given to the defense attorneys and the prosecuting attorneys, who will then take it in the courtroom before 12 jurors and a judge. So that's the chain
That's
of
a lot of
events.
eyeballs.
A lot of eyeballs critiquing and looking over police reports.
Even the jury sometimes?
Even the jury gets copies of the police report in trials.
Wow, I can see why that could be a daunting task then. And a police officer on the spot writing those notes has to be very careful and mindful of that whole chain. So, and then the state's attorneys are going to do like thumbs up or thumbs down,
Correct.
whether this report is going to pass muster, I guess you should say.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Is it more likely that it's going to go through, or
It is more likely because the sergeant and the detective lieutenant and the administrative captain have all had their eyes on it as well, which is it's a more recent thing here in the last 10 to 15 years that they've introduced those levels of critiquing, so that the there and there situation does not happen, which is nice to have. It's embarrassing to have the captain of administration send a police report back that I missed an error in, but I'm also thankful that it's there to make sure my officers are putting their best foot forward in their careers.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about the literacy in police work. And I want you to share anything that I haven't asked you that you think is important for the public in general to know about literacy and police work, because this is just so fascinating. You know, you watch the cop shows, you don't see any of this. I don't
Right.
think about the police car being almost a rolling office. So what else? What are we missing here? What else would you share?
There are agencies that hire policemen who just have a high school diploma. However, they start them off making minimum wage. And so it's not out of the question to be a police officer with a high school diploma without a college education. It's just the pay scale is not equal to the danger you put your life in, or a policeman puts their life in for minimum wage. For instance, I was able to use the experience from my military time to get on our police department without a degree. But as soon as I got there, my city pays for any college education I want to go get. So they paid for my associates, they paid for my bachelor's, and they're paying for my master's.
That's
And so I would encourage young people who want to work in law enforcement but struggle with reading to go ahead and get their foot in the door in law enforcement if college isn't their forte at 21 years old.
yeah.
Because it doesn't hurt. I'm 47 now and still going to college because I think as a leader, I want to be a learning leader. I want to continue learning for the rest of my career.
John, how are you going to do that if you don't like reading?
Discipline, just like I don't like eating healthy or working out, but it's part of life.
That D word, discipline.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, John, for joining me on Literacy Journeys with Lyndon and sharing your very interesting story about police work.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's been wonderful.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Mr. John Redstone, who is a sergeant with the police force in Granite City, Illinois. Thank you so much, John, for joining us. And if you like these Literacy Journeys with Linda, please be sure and click the subscribe button so you can catch all the wonderful interviews that I'm doing with these very interesting people about their literacy journey. Thank you so much, John. We'll see you next time. Bye.